everyone's going to make a mistake.
It was so badass and exciting.
This will be ingrained in my head for a long time.
You and the HR team were so transparent. Oof. So welcome everybody. We're so happy to have you here. We're so excited. This is our first installment of Cutie Chats, a free webinar series where we explore different topics and themes and conversations around LGBTIQA+ inclusivity with a focus on the workplace. And I'm going to introduce our very special guest in a moment, who I'm very excited to chat with. But I'd just like to briefly introduce myself. My name's Archie. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm very proudly the founder and CEO at Queertown. So Queertown, we deliver LGBTIQA+ education and training and consultation in workplaces and schools and events across Australia. And very, very excited to introduce the fabulous Abbey, who has become not only an ongoing partner and friend in a professional sense, but also a personal mate now, just through the beauty of the relationship we've formed through Novatti and Queertown. So Novatti is a global payment company, and Abbey is an HR leader who I've worked closely with through Novatti. Abbey, is there anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself, or Novatti? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so my name's Abby. I use she, her pronouns. So we at Novatti started our partnership with Queertown, it would be just over 12 months ago now. And it has been a partnership of love and respect. And we are continuing that to this day. And it's been a valuable partnership for everyone in our business.
Yeah, and it's been fun. It's been so nice and
It has
fun.
been fun.
Particularly, working in a tech industry, when Novatti reached out, I couldn't help but have some sort of preconceived idea as to like what a tech company would look like and what our engagement would look like. So to be met with Rainbow and Sunshine Incarnate has been a really exciting partnership. So today's topic is obviously around supporting trans and gender diverse folks in workplaces to transition or affirm their gender. And we thought this would be an amazing topic to start with, considering November is Trans Awareness Month. And one of the, really unique parts of our relationship with Novatti was this real focus on trans and gender diverse inclusion, which we'll begin to touch on. So Abby, let's just dive straight into the chat and
So
just imagine we don't have an audience, we're just having a chit chat.
I don't know if people want us to do that up.
Yeah, with boundaries and limitations.
Okay.
So let's start from the start. So you
Mm-hmm.
reached out to Queertown, I think at the end of
Mm-hmm.
2023. Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
talk us through what kind of happened before you reached out
Yeah.
and what
Yeah,
led to that?
absolutely. I remember this day vividly, and I'm actually in the same room that it happened. A team member and myself were asked to have a meeting with one of our other team members. So myself and a member of the PX team. So we call people experience team. And I remember sitting here in this room with a particular individual, and I could see that they really wanted to tell us something, but they were really, really struggling. And for us, everything else that we had planned for the rest of that day went totally out of the window, because I remember it was a really short meeting that they had booked into our calendars, and we'd run overtime. And then they told us that they were trans and would like to talk about transitioning at the workplace. And so we sort of started talking about that, just a really brief chat. And I remember the sheer joy on their face when they said to us, "Would you like me to share my name with you?" And when they shared their name, it was just, even with it, you could visibly see the relief in their body. But this was sort of September last year. And the person didn't transition at work until January 2024. So we had a planning period sort of over, months leading up to this to ensure that the transition was a positive experience for the team member, as well as the organisation as well.
For someone who's watching this and maybe they do have that meeting or that interaction with someone who says, hey, I'm trans and I want to figure this out in the workplace, what was kind of going through your mind in that moment from your HR perspective? And do you have any kind of tips as to maybe what went well in that initial conversation?
So the first thing that went through my mind is, how do I do this? I've never done this before. How do I support this person? That was the first piece that went through my mind. How do I provide the most positive experience possible for this person when I've never gone through this before? So quite often as HR practitioners, we're expected to know everything. We're expected to know the right thing to say, the right thing to do. But the big thing for me was, I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to step into this space.
Totally.
I was just, first of all, fortunate in our situation at Novatti, that we do have someone here who works for us, who is in a position of power, who has a trans child, who was able to provide a guidance that way. But the key piece for us was, for this team member, this is their journey. It's not ours, not mine. It's not the team member who has a trans child. Every journey is individual. And that was the key for us, was saying to that team member, we are here to support you through this process, but we want you to guide us on what you want this to look like.
Seriously, that is one of the reasons why I think it was such a successful experience and process for that individual and for Novatti as a company. And in the work we do at Queertown, we do recommend that folks take the lead of the individual, ask them, how can we best support you? What would you like us to take the lead in? And what would you like to take the lead in? And rather than, as you said, Abby, like pretending that you've got all the answers, is actually making it a collaborative process and following that person's lead. So you had that initial conversation, you figured out, okay, we've got some work to do, and then you did some outreach for external consultation.
We reached out to one person because I happen to follow Queertown already on Instagram. So we reached out to one person.
Great.
I still remember the first day that you came into the office at Novatti. And that was the piece of, how did you support us as an organisation, and how were we guided by you as the subject matter expert in this space? Because I wasn't the subject matter expert in this space. And as I've said before, as HR practitioners, quite often we're expected to be. But listening to you, that was a big piece as to how we wanted to do this and how we should do this. For the particular team member, it was about, how can we do it authentically for them? How are they supported throughout the organisation in a way that they wanted to be supported throughout the organisation? But then also there was a key critical moment for them that we weren't aware of up until that point, where they had a really difficult conversation, and it happened to be with their leader, that they then went, okay, I need to do something about this because I don't want to leave work. And as you speak about, Arch, quite often when people transition, they leave work, they start a new job, and that's where they transition. And this individual didn't want to do that. So it was talking to them about how we step into that difficult conversation too, when we became aware of it, but making sure that they're involved in the framework, me sitting there saying to them, I would like to do this. I've thought about this. What do you think? How do you feel?
For everyone who's watching, each workplace is so different culturally and depending on the industry that you're in. And for context, Novatti is a tech company. So you've got a certain demographic of humans who are attracted to that industry. It is typically a hyper-masculine industry, culturally diverse industry with different kind of religious backgrounds, cultural beliefs, some conservative family values in there too, which is what was present within the organization. And so what we ended up working on together was agreeing that the best thing we could do up front is to get a really strong foundation of education up front.
100%.
We wanted to have a consistent language across the board so that before this person transitioned publicly within the workplace, everyone at least had a basic understanding of what that meant, how to use the language, what to do if we make a mistake. And although I remember the individual in particular who was transitioning, there was almost a bit of impatience in the end of being like, oh, I just want to get this done. But it was so great to make sure everyone had that basic understanding so that when these conversations happened after the transition, everyone kind of had the kind of basic language. It'd be great to get your perspective, Abby, engaging an external provider, because sometimes people do this internally or they just try to find a video on YouTube, for example. How was that experience of getting training and putting your teams through that, considering that kind of difference in people's kind of starting points?
I think the key for us was it needed to be consistent for everybody. And yes, we could have done videos and blah, blah, but it just wouldn't have had the same impact by way of everyone came from a different starting point. So providing people with an opportunity to be in a room for all of our team in Melbourne, being in a room with you to have difficult conversations, to pose questions. There was no question too great. That everybody felt comfortable enough to do that, firstly, but then also we gave the same experience to our remote team, who we're globally diverse, our remote team to have that same experience as well. Because this particular team member worked for everybody, they worked with everybody, so we needed to make sure that everybody had the same level of understanding and that there were key points that everybody understood, like language and like what to do if you make a mistake. They were two key pieces for us because everyone's going to make a mistake, but it's about how do you step into that and how do you have that conversation when you do make a mistake. So they were two key pieces for us.
Yeah, and I remember they were great sessions. And, something we do at Queertown is we very much promote a judgment-free space, ask questions. If you're worried that something's going to be problematic or misworded, stumble through it and we'll support you to kind of figure it out. And we did have some comments come up and some questions come up that I could see were confronting for some other people in the. But it was awesome in that we were able to kind of air some of those comments and fears. And by the end of a lot of the workshops, we did see like a really great arc of kind of learning and coming on board. Not everyone's going to come on board, that's the reality. But I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts around your expectations of the impact of the training versus, what you kind of saw on the other side when this particular member did kind of transition publicly.
So A, yes, it definitely met expectations, and B, there were positive surprises. What was the big surprise was people being comfortable to share their lived experiences. That was really cool, that people were in a space with you for half a day, just met you, that they felt comfortable to share their lived experiences in that room with their colleagues. And we actually had some people, feel comfortable to tell us that they were part of the queer community that we didn't know before. So that was something that we didn't expect and was a really nice surprise for us. So that was good. We also had those challenging conversations. And, when you're in HR, those team members who you think you're going to have a challenge with. But it was just stepping into that and not being afraid to have those conversations. For the transitioning team member, after we announced who they were, they did have some people who made mistakes, but they also felt comfortable and empowered enough to say something because they knew that everybody had the same level of education. When dead name was used or when someone used the incorrect pronouns, they felt comfortable to call them out on it too.
And for reference, for anyone watching this, the term dead name refers to using someone's name that they may have been given at birth or that they used before they transitioned. So often it's referred to as a dead name and we avoid using it. We just use the name and pronouns that someone uses after they transition. And I've got to say, Abbey, I think one of the reasons why this was so strong is because you and the HR team were so transparent and it was actually a huge strength. I think sometimes organizations we engage with, want to have a facade of like everything's great and like everything's going really well. But it was actually so useful to have you say, look, here are some concerns we have, to have on your radar. There are particular individuals, i.e., this person's leader perhaps, or this, So it meant that I could go in with a really clear sense of where people were at. And I think that's why it made it particularly impactful. Were there any challenges or barriers throughout the process that you think are worth noting? Because, you were so lucky in that you had leadership buy-in. And I know through our work at Queertown, leadership buy-in can often be the biggest barrier for people getting this work through. So you kind of already had that. Were there any other kind of barriers or concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember visibly, this will be ingrained in my head for a long time. I remember having a really difficult conversation with a person who's in a position of power at our business. when we had launched this and we'd launched that, everybody in the organization is going to be going through this program, the investment in time, financially. And I remember talking to this person, they were saying, we're having really, difficult financial position at the moment. And I don't think this is something that we should be investing in. I think that we can spend our money elsewhere. And I remember having that conversation with this particular individual and getting so upset. But I called my CEO and I said to him, you need to know this is the conversation that I've just had. And he was obviously supportive, and we wouldn't have done the program if my CEO wasn't supportive of it. And he said, no worries, thanks for letting me know. We don't agree with this. And he even let our board chairman know too. And our board chairman, no, this is the right thing to do. We're absolutely continuing to go with this. We are investing in the right place. So again, even though this person was in a position of power, I needed my CEO and our board to know that this is what's happening here. These are the challenges that we're facing and that this individual could potentially face too. And again, that transparency. Because if you just let something like that sit over here and fester, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, oh my gosh. And that's why we value having HR and humans like you in that space, because sometimes with that more traditional leadership style, there is such a focus on numbers and productivity, but it really misses the key point, which is happy staff are productive staff. So if your staff
100%.
uncomfortable, unhappy, that they're not authentic, then the work's not going to be good. So, and honestly, the biggest win and validation, which is so exciting about this, do you want to talk about what actually came out of this project? Just, in contrast to some of those concerns, why are we focusing on something like this?
Yeah, I mean, this was absolutely a byproduct of why we chose to focus on this. But we were fortunate enough to win. So we're a fintech. And we have an industry governing body called, Fintech Australia. They hold a thing which is called the Finnies. And due to a lot of our diversity and inclusion work, particular this piece, supported by Queertown, was we were provided with the 2024 Best Workplace Diversity and Inclusion at the Finnies, which was fabulous. So that was amazing, but it was just really validating that we're doing the right work and we're focusing on the right things.
It was so badass and exciting. And I remember we were so excited when the nomination came through, and then you preparing for the awards night and like sending posts. You FaceTimed me, and we were just squealing afterwards because it's so exciting, to see that impact and to get that recognition. And I've got to say, through our work, at least at Queertown, working across industries with lots of different organizations, within the tech industry, which is so conservative, you really have established yourself in this Australian context as real leaders in this space. And it's because I truly believe of your sort of fearlessness in being like, we don't have all the answers, but we want to figure this out and we're going to go on the journey. And that's the best mentality, Sometimes people really stall themselves because you want to have everything ready to go from the outset, but then it never happens. So honestly, congratulations. It's very exciting.
Thanks.
Abby, for someone who's watching this, who's working in HR or DEI or maybe just on ground level trying to get something started, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling a bit overwhelmed and doesn't know how to get going?
Just pick one small thing. Pick one small thing and just one step forward. That's it. It doesn't have to be this huge, great, big piece of work. Even putting pronouns on your email signatures. One small thing.
Nice. Yeah, you're right. And totally agree. Building momentum is what gives you that motivation. You can't just start at the finish line. So thank you for that. I think that's a really nice tip. What are your tips for maintaining resilience and well-being of trans and gender diverse people and practitioners in the face of relentless political and social media anti-trans rhetoric? Oof.
So one of the biggest pieces that we did, which I would highly encourage if you have a trans team member transitioning at work, was building a support network for this individual. That is not just your HR team. It is not just your leadership team. So when trans team members are facing challenges, they have multiple people that they can go to and people that they feel comfortable sharing different levels of information with as well.
Nice. That's such a good one. And I think what was so brilliant about your model with that is that, you looked at both professional and personal. So you were looking, are there
Yeah, we did.
opportunities in their personal life? Because
Yeah,
it
we
is
did.
more than a professional experience, it's a personal one too.
Absolutely.
So that was,
Yeah.
10 out of 10. So I think that's a great one in terms of support. Something that I would add for maybe more of like an organization approach is to have a bit of a contingency plan. So it's inevitable that there will be some backlash, probably people with conservative views, and that might come internally from the team, or it might come from online if you're posting about progress or the allyship work that you're doing. So it's so important to just have a little plan before you post and share to say, okay, if we do get some backlash, what's our approach? What are the steps that we take? Because sadly, we do see, someone might share something on their website or their Facebook, professional Facebook, and they do get some negative comments. And suddenly the response is, let's just take the post down. But that does communicate to the community and particularly trans and gender diverse folks that those conservative views will be prioritized and that trans people will be kind of deleted or removed to avoid any sort of backlash. So having that plan in place can be really, really helpful. And obviously, from my bias perspective, I would say, reach out to an external provider like Queertown in that we can provide some initial consultation and put some supports in place for you to assist you with that. So we have come towards the end of our time. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Abbey, for joining us and for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And this is such an important topic. Abbey, were there any final comments that you wanted to share on behalf of yourself or Novatti, or how people can find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn and you can find Novatti at novatti.com. If you do any payments, if you manage funds, if you send money in or out, hit us up. If you want to be partnered with, a like-minded organisation who are really invested in this community, but invested in building partnerships with community like-minded people and organisations, hit us up. We're a fun bunch of people.
I can confirm, highly recommend. Thank you, Abbey. Appreciate you.
Hi, peeps.